Namaskar, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi Achint. Trump Saab came in and basically upset the whole paradigm about the Indo-Pacific. That being said, India ka jo role hai, what the role of India is always going to be what it is. India is the central place in the Indo-Pacific. There's no question, and you can't have an Indo-Pacific without India. The Indian Ocean is the center part of the world going forward because all of the trade goes from here, all of the action is here, and we see the Americans also trying to get inside to this region. So I have with me Commander Chakrapani, who's going to help us understand what's the game in the ocean. And I'm going to do a lot more shows on the Navy because we need to understand what's happening there. We also know Prime Minister Modi was there with the Navy during Diwali. So Navy is getting some special attention. I'm sure the other forces are a little jealous of that. But in any case, sir, namaskar. Thank you so much for the time and the effort. Welcome to the show.
Namaskar, Adi. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. Absolutely correct. The reality is, maritime is a domain which very few people know of. And maritime is a domain which is most critical, and we get to know about a little more about these, some of the concepts as we go along. You
Sir.
spoke about the Indo-Pacific. Let's start with the Indian Ocean region, or as they call it, the IOR. The Indian Ocean region is a very unique region. It's an area of sea where it is very easy to enter, but very difficult to exit in wartime. So if you look at the map of the Indian Ocean region, you will notice a number of things. One is a blue thick line that indicates the amount of traffic that goes around in the Indian Ocean region.
Shall I put
That
up
is
the
the sea lanes. Yeah, there's the next. Yeah, this one. So on this slide, you will notice that there is a blue thick line. That is the main line of sea lanes of communication, the SLOC as we call them. There are thinner lines which you will notice are there, but all lines converge in certain areas of land because constrictions where the water is small or limited, and these are called choke points. These choke points, if we go left to right, you have the Suez Canal. Coming down is the Straits of Bab el Mandab. This is where all the shipping from the Mediterranean, from the Red Sea comes into the Arabian Sea. Then you have a big one of Straits of Hormuz. The Straits of Hormuz is where all the oil and gas from the Persian Gulf is coming into the Arabian Sea, and from here comes to India, goes ahead into China. China depends on this like crazy. Go further down, you have the Straits of Malacca, which is just after the Andaman Nicobar Islands, where you have Indonesia on one side, Malaysia, Singapore on the other. These straits account for almost 1 lakh ships going through it every year. Then you have the smaller straits, the Straits of Sunda, the Straits of Lombok. And why shipping doesn't go through this? Primarily because ships, don't forget, are slow moving creatures on sea. They move at their own pace, generally 15 to 20, 22, 24 knots. Essentially, multiply that by 2, you get a rough figure in kilometers per hour. A 15 knot means 30 kilometers an hour. And you are traversing thousands of kilometers. Net, all this takes days. So you have these choke points. Now, if you go to the next slide, Adi, you will notice that there are very many thinkers who have spoken about the Indian Ocean region, but most importantly is Alfred Thayer Mahan, who spoke about whoever dominates the Indian Ocean region is the person who will control the world. And how will this happen? What is Indian Ocean so important about? It's the third largest ocean. Let's go to the next slide, Adi, please. It's the third largest ocean. Sea lanes of communication, like I said, easy to enter, difficult to exit in wartime, in conflict. But it has its own set of problems. Piracy, armed robbery, whether you have at the Red Sea or you have in the Malacca Straits. There are these maritime terrorists. Add Houthis into them, add your Somalian guys, illicit trading happens significantly. You have a lot of ships that switch off their transponders and suddenly start doing illegal stuff. Environmental issues, and there is this great power rivalry which is happening here. We'll talk about it in a while. But the biggest threat here is China. We already spoken about the choke points. Next slide, please. These are the choke points. We've spoken about them. Let's move on. Move on to the concept of the Indo-Pacific. The Indo-Pacific, essentially, next one. And the next. The Indo-Pacific basically is adding on a small region, which is the Pacific Ocean, the South China Sea, into the Indian Ocean region. South China Sea has a belligerent China. It has numerous disputes with the littoral states here. And India is the linchpin. We will come to this when we come to a concept called fort or fleet. And here comes in the role of some multilateral navies, the Quad, the AUKUS, the responses of China, especially China, and then Russia. Let's move on. What is the geostrategic overview as far as the Indo-Pacific is concerned? 70% of global population is here. It has choke points. It has its own issues, but strategic competition is on primarily between the US and China. In extension, India and China, because India feels Indian Ocean region, it's its area of operation where it is there. Pakistan tries to play its role, and of course, you have extra regional powers, the US, the UK, and of course, France. Major flashpoints out here and instabilities. Next one, Adi. These flashpoints are what? These are points where a war can take place at short notice. Taiwan, South China Sea, the Malacca Straits are big flashpoints. Taiwan, basically because China wants to gobble up Taiwan. Taiwan resists. The US is not happy about it. South China Sea is where China is trying its best to expand. And when we come to the fort and fleet, you will realize why. Why those artificial islands at all? These Malacca Straits. It is the primary energy sea lane of communication. China's major problem out here. And of course, you have piracy, congestion, all those come out with it. You have China, which has set up a base in Djibouti, trying its best to set up a base in Gwadar. And of course, the Reams base is already there. The Bay of Bengal and the Andaman Sea is where India is expanding, and for very good reasons. Persian Gulf, the less I speak, the better it is. In the Red Sea, and if you go to the next slide, Adi, you will get to know, you'll get to see what all is happening as far as Red Sea is concerned, and the Houthis were at rampage. There are two documented incidents wherein the Chinese Navy was within miles of where these two tankers were involved in piracy or in attempted hijacking. The Chinese Navy did what it does best: switch off transponder and vanish. They just ran away. They thought it is the kabutar policy. आंख बंद कर लो, नहीं दिखाई दिया तो कोई नहीं है, हमने नहीं देखा. So that's what Chinese Navy did. So let's get on to some concepts of maritime strategy. Just 4 concepts is what I will touch on. One is a concept called the freedom of navigation. The oceans are common good. Everybody can use them. Everybody should be free to use them, which means anybody and everybody can transit through the ocean or the sea. This is called freedom of navigation and the right of innocent passage. Even warships can exercise this right, saying, I am going quietly, I am doing nothing here, no economic activity, I am not training my guns, I am not switching on my radars. A submarine can also do it so long as it is on surface. So this is the concept of freedom of navigation, something which the US routinely employs in South China Sea when it goes through the Taiwan Straits. NATO does this. They did it in off Lakshadweep also a few months back. The next concept is a concept of sea control or sea denial. Sea control means I have absolute control over the sea where I am sitting. The next slide, Adi. I have total control here. This means I have control, I am control all the 3 medium on the sea, the air, above the sea, the surface of the sea, and the subsurface. It becomes contested when there are two powers that are acting in unison against each other and saying, I will not allow you to control the sea. The other is a thing of sea denial. I will deny you the ability to use the sea in the manner you want by making it more costly for you. This is something which a smaller navy, the Pakistan Navy does this routinely. The Indian Navy or even the Chinese Navy, if you will, practices sea denial in the South China Sea, for example, where it says, I will not let the American carriers come here. And it has carrier buster bombs or missiles and say, I will make it difficult for the carrier to come here. The Indian Ocean region is a contested sea control area between India and China. And we'll talk about string of pearls and necklace of diamond in a little while. Sea command at sea is the final Mahanian concept, wherein I have ultimate command of the sea. Let's go on to the next slide. And this is a strategy called the fort versus the fleet. Fort, think back to the olden days. The fort, the land had guns. The guns had a certain range and it had a certain sight that you could see over the sea. Therefore, you said, if I have a well-developed fort, I will prevent anybody from landing at the sea. Go back to the Incheon landings, go back to the landings that happened during the Second World War. You will start realizing that why it was so important to have guns at the sea coast. Then came the guns had more and more range, and it finally came down to the range of 12 nautical miles, which was also the visible range. And that is now called the concept of territorial waters, wherein I control that part totally. A major revolution happened by the introduction of sea-based land attack cruise missiles. When this happened, it showed its efficiency. Go back to the Gulf War, the flattening of Afghanistan after the 9/11. You can see various incidents that happened at this time. Don't forget, India used the first time ever an anti-ship missile, onboard missile boats against Pakistan on the 4th of December. Why we have the Navy Day on the 4th of December and we flattened Karachi using missile boats. We towed them there and did that. That was the first time somebody used missile boats in that manner. Moving on, you have the fort now started thinking, hey, I am getting redundant. So the next thing that happened was repurposing of these sea-based missiles onto land-based missiles or canisters here. The first of them was the Soviet P-15, the Styx missile. In the early 60s, Egypt used them very intelligently in 1967 war with Israel, where it sank INS, that is Israeli naval ship Elliot, the first anti-ship missile kill. Thereafter came the Silkworm, thereafter many others. You had the tanker war, and today you have the Chinese DF-21, which is called the carrier killer with a range of over 2,000 kilometers or 1,000 nautical miles. The DF-26, they call it the Guam killer because they will get the island of Guam, its major base in the Pacific. It can knock that off. And you have various other things that have come in. You can also have some of these vectors on aircraft which can take off from land and then fly over the sea and deliver ordnance. So the fort started coming back. Moving on to the next slide, where are we headed? It's a seesaw battle. But a most difficult thing at sea is transparency. Over land, you have satellites, you have so much more facilities which you can use. You have communication. You have no trouble about communication over land. But at sea, it becomes that much more difficult. It is vast. You have the freedom, a fleet has the freedom of going wherever it pleases, being totally away from each other, and then suddenly converging at the place, time of choice, and delivering the ordinance of choice in a concentrated manner. Peninsular India here gives India a phenomenal advantage. Just look at the map and you'll see how far into the peninsula, into the Indian Ocean, the peninsula of India juts in. Moment it does that, You can imagine we have the entire major slot under control. Add the advantage of the Andamans, the Lakshadweep, and Galathea Bay is a fantastic thing which is happening. I call it the three unsinkable aircraft carriers that India has. In the north, Diglipur, Port Blair, and Nicobar Islands, and the Galathea Bay or Campbell Bay. Those are places where you can have fighter aircraft, the Su-30 land, they have operated from here, and you can control the Malacca Straits or the slots. That is why China is so worried. Let's move on to the next thing. There's a concept of battlefield transparency that we spoke about. Now, even with satellites, drones, mail, hail class UAVs, one domain is just not transparent, especially in our area of interest, the Indian Ocean region. The hydrology here is so beneficial to the submarine that a submarine can hide even in plain sight. The probability of detection of a submarine by even the US Navy, the best sonars, the best equipment, is probably around 8 to 10%. Therefore, that is where you have the crucial edge that you need. It's important. Why? Economy. Your entire trade happens here. Your resources of oil and gas, fishing, they're all in the oceans. Undersea cables. Look at the way India depended on 19 cables for our internet, global internet. Not just 19. China has cut cables of Taiwan, reportedly of even in the Baltic Sea, where Chinese vessels have been found. One cable cut, internet down means billions of losses in business. Can you imagine that? Important that we do it. And then you have the deep sea mining. Submarines therefore become critical for deterrence. You have your second strike capability, your sea denial, sea control, surveillance, and the ability to project power. That is why we do so many joint exercises with other navies only for this purpose. So, talking about blessing of geography, I spoke about the way Indian subcontinent juts out. Go to the next slide, Adi. You can see this for yourself. The next one. Look at the way India is. This is the blessing of geography. We are blessed. We control the Malacca Straits. The China says we have actually owning a whip in our hand, and we can do stand up, sit down to any vessel that comes here. With Galathea Bay coming in the Andamans, even more so. Peninsular India jutting out to control the main slog. And Diego Garcia, the Adelaga Island base that we are making in Mauritius. Diego Garcia, that entire peninsula has been handed over to Mauritius with the only exception of the island base of Diego Garcia. India is invested there in a big way. Do this, you control the Indian Ocean region, and therefore, this is the blessing of geography. Go to the next slide, you'll see the next to next. We have our security concerns. What are our security concerns? 95% of our trade is here. We want an rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific, a safe and free. We want to keep our slots open. We want to counter terrorism. We want to counter radicalism. And we've been at the receiving end of string of pearls. We'll come to this. Therefore, we have to do something called countering China. We'll come to that in a moment. Moving on, how is India countering this? Very briefly, go to the next slide, please. India has demonstrated its resolve and ability. Operation Cactus, where we ensured the Maldivian president was put back. Anti-piracy patrols in the Red Sea. Indian Navy is so respected. The moment they see an Indian aircraft or an Indian UAV, the pirates jump onto their boats and vanish. They don't want to be anywhere close to it because the Indian Navy has made a mark for itself. India is now going ahead with patrolling the Malacca Straits in anti-pirate operations, anti-robbery operations in the Malacca Straits with Indonesia and Singapore. Think of it. We have already spoken about the aircraft carriers and the fact that we have created what is called as the IORA, Indian Ocean Rim Association, a fusion center in Gurgaon, where we have real-time information of what is happening across the Indian Ocean region. In this place, we have representatives of Singapore, Japan, Australia, UK, US, France, all of them sit here also. Go to the next slide. China is our main challenger. It is expanding its blue water reach. Its primary problem is the breaking out of the Malacca dilemma. BRI, CPEC, all ways of breaking out of this dilemma. Because it wants to reduce its dependence on the Malacca Straits. It's trying its best to establish bases. It has done that in Djibouti. But Djibouti base, we have already seen, is good for nothing. They've not been able to do anything. Gwadar, very interesting situation. It wanted to create its first overseas strategic command out here. Yet, Pasni is going into the hands of the US. Gwadar with Habdo Tehreek, with so much going on in Baluchistan, the less I speak, the better. Gwadar doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Interestingly, Pasni is about 120 kilometers. 100 kilometers of Sandek is Ricodec. Sandek is with China, Ricodec is with going to be with US. One more problem coming up there. It's best I stop here. Reams, of course, yes. So China is trying to challenge the domination, and India is the only one that can stop this happening. And that is something which Trump needs to understand, else he gets trumped himself. Let's move on to China itself. China has the curse of geography. Look at the map. Chinese ships cannot get out of China into the Pacific Ocean freely. There are something called the first and the second island chains. The first island chain is South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, Malaysia. China doesn't have the freedom to get out of it. Even if it does manage, you have the second island chain. Japan, Guam, and Australia. All so well fortified that Chinese Navy finds it difficult to venture out freely. Therefore, what does it do? It has created an extension of the fort. You remember the fort and the peninsular India which was jetting out? They have these artificial islands in the South China Sea. They militarized them, put in air bases, put in weapons there. Why? Only because they want to show control and be able to seize control of the South China Sea. That is why the 9-dash line, that is why China does what it does. It is building its navy at a feverish pace. Today it has more ships than the US. In tonnage, so the main issue out here is China. China has tried its best to do what it can. Next slide, Adi. It has tried its best to arm the Houthis. Not much has happened. Hamas, it built tunnels for them. It's called out for all of this, trying its best with Gwadar. It did with Maldives. Don't forget the India Out campaign and what happens with just one visit of Modi ji to the Lakshadweep Island. He just sat on a chair with the sea in front of him and posted a picture. That's it. That is why a picture says more than 1,000 words can do. And China was brought to heel. Hambantota is trying to expand the Hambantota. Next one, Adi. That facility is not even being used. It's trying to get into Colombo. It has made 6 submarine pens in Cox's Bazar, in a port near Cox's Bazar. 8 warship berthing facilities. Bangladesh, has only 2 submarines. It has a deep sea port in Myanmar. That's crucial for the Belt and Road Initiative. Yet, it has not been able to utilize this port for multiple reasons. I'm sure Adi at some time will talk to you about how you have the Three Brother Alliance and so much more that's happening in Myanmar. Right? Cambodia, of course, Cocos Island, it is already built a second airfield. But just south of Cocos Island is Diglipur, where we are building our own facility. So we can control that. Japan has problems with China, so has Taiwan. Let's move on. Chinese dilemma is two oceans. There is a concept which says, next slide, Adi, that to be a superpower, you need access to two oceans. It has some access or a limited access into Pacific. It wants to get into Indian Ocean region, which is why the Kwempu port in Myanmar, which is why Gwadar, which is why it's trying all that it's trying in Bangladesh, Maldives, Sri Lanka, not very successful. It has tried its best. BRA was a beautiful attempt, very well planned, poorly executed. It tried a Kra canal on the where the Kra Peninsula. It was put to rest by India and the US. It done its best. Not happening. Moving on to the next slide. Now you can see the string of pearls in clearly. Gwadar, I put a star there, primarily to say question mark. Maldives, bigger question mark. Chittagong Cox's Bazar, no idea what's happening there. Kra, of course, is gone. So you have the, and Djibouti, well, the less I say, the better it is. The important part of a base means you should have ship repair facilities, you should have rearming facilities, and you should have rest and recuperation facilities. None of these ports, as of now, can provide any of this. Right? To counter this, India has come up with the necklace of diamonds, creating a bigger envelope which extends beyond the string of pearls. So we have the Dukum port in Oman, we have Ascension Island, Reunion Island, Diego Garcia, gone into Galatia Bay, of course, Vietnam, which we are building in a big way, Japan, Vladivostok Chennai route, and of course, coordination with Mongolia. Effectively, we have covered all what China is trying to do. This is the necklace of diamond, which is the counter to this. Let's go to the next slide. This is focusing a little more on the underwater domain. This underwater domain is interesting. Why? Essentially because the underwater domain, like I said, has depth. Especially in an area, in an era of growing transparency, you need this. You have an ability to launch masked attack on land from an unexpected location. See the examples I had given earlier during how the US used them. India can also use them, and that is why we are doing our second strike capability, the triad with nuclear submarines. It ensures the seas can be denied because you do not know where the submarine is. And wherever a submarine area is, submarine has a simple idea. Or anyone that comes on surface in that area will be knocked off. You will not let your ship get there. Whoever is there, thank you very much. Good night, patata, see you, bye-bye. Covert operations. You can land your Marcos, and of course, superior intelligence gathering, intelligence surveillance reconnaissance. The next slide and next few slides give you a rough idea of what underwater equipment the major people in this area have. India, of course, has got 2 of the Ariane class, 2 more are under construction. We'll get 6 more SSNs, 6 Kalveris, they already exist. Project 75I will be 6, maybe even 9 submarines. Right? Project 76 will be a big one when it comes up. Right? Oh, I've forgotten, missed out to add the Sindhu Ghosh class. They're also out here. There are tube-launched missiles, and there will be missiles which will be launched from vertical silos. Big things, these missiles at the moment from the K5, K4, K15 have got up to a range of 3,500 kilometers. BrahMos will become a tube-launched missile, or maybe even it'll have a vertical launcher, which will get put in the 75, Project 75. Then Project 76, my mistake. You would have phenomenal capabilities. China has 70 submarines, plus including their nuclear submarines. Predominantly, that has the diesel-electric ones, they are called an underwater orchestra because they make a lot of noise. It's expanding patrols into the Indian Ocean region. Moving on to the next slide, these are Australia is trying its best to leverage its Collins class submarines to move into the nuclear ones under the AUKUS. AUKUS has gone into a limbo, right? It has found the next best thing to do, cooperate with India in setting up underground, under seabed sensors and anti-submarine warfare. And that's what we are doing in a big way here. And then, of course, you have Pakistan. Pakistan does have certain amount of advantages in terms of its Augusta 90B submarines, which have air independent propulsion. It has the new Angkor class submarines. 8 of them will come, 3 have been handed over. So it is coordinating with China for logistics and sensor data. Again, the trouble of Chinese made stuff, well, it is an orchestra going there. The Chinese Pak Navy was totally missing during Operation Sindoor. You have some other regional powers which have, next slide please, which have some abilities to project power out here, some submarines. There's a list out here. Important ones are basically Singapore with 4 submarines, Vietnam with 6 kilo class. The others are small. Indonesia also has 6 submarines. And of course, the extra regional powers. Japan has 24, up to 24 Soryu and Taigai class. South Korea has the KSS 1, 2, and 3 class submarines. Next slide, Adi. Then, of course, you have 40 to 50 submarines deployed by the US in this part of the world. Because the US knows it needs this part, right? France also has its fleet here. Occasionally, you will have a submarine from any other of the nations, but they're predominantly what are here. What is India doing with all this? India knows it has to counter China. So does the US, which is why we have so much of intelligence and exercises integration with these countries. Go to the next slide. We have the Malabar exercises. The Malabar exercises are getting more and more complicated, more and more intense, more and more real life, mimicking real wartime scenarios. It enhances anti-submarine warfare. It enhances interoperability. We have Australia, India exercises, submarine exercises, quad joint patrols, laying of underwater acoustic sensor network for submarine tracking, multiple parsecs exercises. But what is interesting is what we did, a deep sea rescue drill by INS Nestar in the South China Sea with 3 different navies. Can you imagine power projection that we are doing out here? That we can come and tell people, hey, don't worry, I'm there, I will support you. Why? US seems to be losing its importance because it is not so reliable and India is seen to be more reliable. That's exactly what was called out by the Philippines president very, very recently when India exercised with the Philippine Navy and the Coast Guard. Let's take a look at some of the trends that are happening as far as the technology is concerned. One of the big ones is like you have the drones in the air, you have unmanned vehicles on land, you have unmanned undersea vehicles and unmanned platforms. These unmanned undersea vehicles in India and everywhere else, they're there. Some of them have been caught also. One of them was captured in the Sunda Straits very recently by the Indonesians, and India got access to that. That is where in the next slide, I will show what exactly India is into in these parts. And of course, you have AI coming in. Anti-submarine warfare, I said, it is very, very difficult. Therefore, it is important to get patterns. Patterns will indicate whether it's a noise from a shoal of fish. Whales make fair amount of noise. So do sharks. Shoals of fish give sounds that can confuse a ship to think it's a submarine. Submarines, of course, are there. And can you then get from patterns, identify what is there? And of course, the biggest daddy of them all, extended range of submarine launched missiles. These missiles can be tube launched, that's from the top of the tube, or from vertical launch silos. Let's go on to the next slide. These are the underwater gliders. We have some tactical autonomous underwater vehicles. You have long distance and extra large underwater vehicles, remotely operated vehicles which are basically tethered and remain there, but they have excellent sonars and they can monitor what's happening around. And of course, seabed based AI driven data fusion capability for extended ISR. Very long back in the 1980s, there was a concept called the capture mine, which was laid along the Norwegian coast with or on the seabed sensors by the US. Did work out to be for a very long time, but it did bottle up this submarine fleet of Soviet Union in those days for a fair amount of time. India is working through the IDEX initiative on a number of initiatives. Next slide. This is a very quick view of what all is there. The Jalkapi, which is an extra large underwater utility vehicle, underwater unmanned underwater vehicle, which will have long endurance of more than 2 weeks. It can stay up. It also would have weapon load. You have swarming systems that are coming up underwater. Multi-system, multi-fusion, buoy-based sonar networks, autonomous weaponized boat swarms that you can pull out, and of course, an autonomous underwater vehicle for encounter submarine or counter mine operations. All of them have come up. They're all in various stages of implementation. So anyone who feels you're not doing much needs to get his head examined. So what are the future risks that we have? I have listed out a certain number of future risks in my opinion. The Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea is the highest risk we have. Because that is where there is a lot of concentration, both from the nuclear submarines, and because there are so many nuclear submarines, there are possibility of pollution. Don't forget, there was a Chinese submarine which got entangled in its own net and actually sank in the Taiwan Straits a year and a half or so back. You have the Malacca Straits, which are contested to a large extent, especially by China, because China feels it has the dilemma as far as Malacca is concerned. The Korean Peninsula, well, you have North and South Korea. North Korea behaves very much like Trump. No wonder they are quite good friends. And of course, the Pacific Islands and the Bay of Bengal are very low threat areas as on date. So what can we take away from all of this? The Indian Ocean region, the Indo-Pacific, is going to remain keenly contested for the future. With increasing use of space-based sensors, weapons even, next slide, Aadi, submarines will play a very major role in directing how conflicts will unfold in the Asia Pac. China is actively looking to become not just a two-ocean, but a 2.5 ocean navy. It is trying to build its influence, ability to put ships into the Arctic. Russia is very wary of it, but it is trying its best there. It is trying to build, it's built icebreakers, it's building bigger ships which can remain out at sea. The newer power types of destroyers, the aircraft carriers. China needs alliances. It doesn't have. It is friendless. No wonder it is pushing for RIC. No wonder it is pushing for bases. Pakistan, to some extent, can be a spoiler with the help of China only. But if US comes in there, I have no idea. It is very difficult to predict how the Hira Mandi of Pakistan will react to it. India, Australia, US, Japan with Quad, seamless ISR, ASW grid coming up. India is demonstrating its ability for submarine rescue in the South China Sea and the future beginning. You can see for yourself. India is doing all that it can. Next slide, please. To build a blue water navy, a blue water capability. It is built its own sea denial capability to ensure the Malacca dilemma remains. Maritime awareness through fusion centers, through long-range long-range aircraft. IORA, the Indian Ocean Rim Association, which has kept China out of it. This is one place where we are doing a very good job, and we are able to synergize all the navies, all the civilian infrastructure of the Indian Ocean littoral countries to come to a single platform where we can tell them what is happening in their area to make it interesting for them. They want to join, not we want them to join. India, with the Sagarmala project, India, next one, please. With the Sagarmala project, India has gone ahead to build capability for deep sea and transshipment nodes. Very important, because if India has to grow economically, we must be able to ship our goods in larger vessels from our ports, not take them to Singapore or to Dubai and transship them. That is why the Vizhinjam port is so important, which is why the Galatia Bay port will be so important, right? We are building active partnerships with Southeast Asian nations, creating dependencies with INSTC corridor, with IMEC, the Vladivostok Chennai sea routes. The Sagar and Mahasagar initiatives are phenomenal. But these are initiatives which make the countries in our neighborhood not dependent but interdependent on us. So, my dear friends, the battle of tomorrow, next slide one, is a battle which will be fought and won at sea. The fort versus the fleet. Depleting resources on land means extra race, a super fast race for resources at sea. India so far has had a free run in the Indian Ocean region, but China is coming up, which means India has to build capacity. It doesn't matter how much money you pour into the Indian Navy, you must have the capacity to build those ships, even if you have the money. That is where India is doing the right thing by the capacity building. Look at the number of shipyards that have come up in the recent past, right? There is a growing realization that events on land can be controlled from those at sea. Just think of the Malacca Straits. The moment you start tightening Malacca Straits, China had realized that it can't hold on to the north. There could be dramatic technological upheavals. The drones made a big difference. For example, in the Ukraine war, is there something like that that's possible? India has to be prepared. We have a history. The Brits came from the sea. They never became a part of India. They ruled and they went back. Do we want history to repeat itself? Therefore, to be secure on land, we have to be secure on sea. Adi.
The main thing is what I understand, sir. I mean, my only, and I say this quite often, is that we need to just swing upside down the map of India and kind of see the the ocean that we have in front of us. That's also ours. It's called the Indian Ocean.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's better it is that we take charge of this entire region and do what we need to do. You know, because otherwise, there are a lot of other people that will come inside and try and create tamasha in your backyard, which I don't think any of us would want. But sir, thank you so much. You've given us a very, very, very clear overview about what's happening around us, and how the position is staked up, and position is actually uh, in terms of the geopolitics of the region, and of course the approaches various different countries are making, including us, uh, into this particular region. I had at one time made a map to kind of portray what India's security interest would be. And I don't know if you're aware, I love making maps. So this is something I had made at one point of time, where I had projected basically our security interests as these triangles. And of course, the northern one is yet to materialize, most likely post when Mr. Putin comes across. So I had mapped out all the bases and how the counter game is actually coming across. So this is something I call this the eagle's claw.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't have any doubts this is going to happen.
Yes, sir.
In many ways, I have amplified whatever you said.
Sir, thank you
The
so much,
Eagles
sir.
Claw, I've only given it a different name.
Thank you, sir.
The
No, this was the
necklace of
audience.
diamonds is what I called it.
Yeah, so this was the audience choice because it looked like a claw in some sort. So I said, okay, fair enough. They came up with it. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for that, for the time and the effort. And we should love to hear from you once again very soon. Till then, to the audience, my request is please like, subscribe, and share your comments and your thoughts as to what do you think India should do and what's happening around if you guys want to add into the discussion. So, once again, thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, Adi. It was a pleasure being on your channel. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.